Okay, let's call ourselves to order. Meeting of the West Newbury Board of Selectmen, August 5th. A few brief announcements. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. Tomorrow night, National Night Out, Pawtucket High School, fun games, great for the kids, see fire engines, other vehicles, DPW vehicles, cotton candy, popcorn. Highly recommend cotton candy, really good for you. The bandstand series continues every Thursday through the 29th, 6:30 on Thursday evenings, rain or shine. This week's performer, first I thought I was going to read, I thought I was reading Don McLean, but it's not Don McLean. It says Don White, singer, storyteller, and you can look up the other performers on the town website. Seniors interested in applying for the senior tax work-off program, interested residents, there is no income restriction on this to work off some amount of their real estate taxes. Contact Teresa at the Council on Aging. And without further ado, Senator Tarr and Representative Mira will give us the long-awaited Commonwealth's FY20 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's always fun to talk about budget items when there's a budget surplus, which we've had. And yeah, in broad words, the Massachusetts economy is doing very, very well, and tax revenues are coming in above expectations, which is always a good thing. Even though our income tax rate has come down steadily over the years, income tax revenues have steadily increased over the years as well.
What about 19? Was it more than, did it come in more than?
There was a budget in 19, yeah. There was a surplus in 19, yes, and for 2020 there will be as well. And not just income tax increases, but we also saw a spike in capital gains tax. And that's always been kind of a wild card. It's hard to predict what capital gains.
Excuse me.
Sure.
You need to turn that on.
The light's on.
No.
Green. Turn it over, Lenny. There you go.
Just got a text from home.
Oh.
Wow. I think my wife, I always thought she had enough of me. I mean, but she's got to watch me in the moon. Hopefully. Yeah, I know. Hopefully. Honey, do I look skinnier on TV, I hope?
So tax revenues have been very, very helpful the past several years. The Massachusetts economy is doing very, very well. And the capital gains that I was just starting to talk about, like I said, are kind of an unpredictable thing. And they went up quite a bit, but under the rules that we have in the State House, a portion of that has to go to the rainy day fund, which is a good thing. And
I heard that on TV. How much? Tell us what the percentage of that is, please. Do we know?
The percent that has to go to the rainy day fund?
Yeah.
Well, there is no specified percentage. However, we try to appropriate as much to it as we can from year to year. And unfortunately, when we had the last recessionary period, it got down to about $1 billion, and we'd actually like it to be more like $3 billion and maybe even $4 billion. A good rule of thumb is to try to have about 10%, and right now we have about a $43 billion budget, and so you'd ideally like to have about $4 billion. One of the interesting things is that because we've had such a robust series of revenue collections at the end of fiscal year 2019 and the beginning of fiscal year 2020, that we are going to be able to make a very sizable contribution to the stabilization fund, and we anticipate that by the time the dust settles between the amount we are contributing in 2019, the amount that we will close out, because we'll have some surplus funding in 2019. And what we hope to do in the fiscal year 2020 budget, that we are very soon going to have $3 billion in the state stabilization fund. And so we anticipate that our ratings agencies for bond ratings will look upon that very favorably. And it's actually something that I'm very enthusiastic about. I know Lenny is as well, but it's not something that gets a lot of attention because it's a savings account basically for difficult times. And so it doesn't get as much attention as spending. Savings very rarely does, But I think it's actually a good news story, and one of the good news stories from the revenue collections that we have. So.
Is there only certain things you can spend that money on? Like we have free cash, it's kind of almost kind of the same probably thing that we kind of put away. And we like to have a certain percentage of our operating budget, whatever. But we don't like to use that money on our operating budget, because then the next year there's going to be a deficit because it was filled by by a rainy day fund, not a revenue source, so to speak. So are certain things?
No, we actually make withdrawals from it, and in fact, it is not uncommon to have withdrawals from it to balance the budget in any given year. And some of us have been very critical of that when we take money from the stabilization fund, also known as the rainy day fund, when in fact it's not raining. But it is fairly unrestricted. It only requires that the legislature make appropriations from it. I've been pursuing for the last several years a constitutional change that would require a 2/3 vote of the legislature to appropriate money from the stabilization fund. Haven't been able to achieve that yet, but the idea is to get some sense of restriction around when that money could be used.
Like we do in our town meeting.
Exactly.
Sorry, Lenny.
No, that's fine.
I took her off your thing. Sorry, Lenny.
That's okay. The other unpredictable source of income is corporate taxes. Those are notably volatile, as the handout was handed out.
Actually, I did. I'm going to hand it out right now.
Okay.
The first 3 pages are all about the subject matter that we're talking about.
Now, on the first page, it'll show that
revenue collections.
corporate tax revenues were $566 million over benchmark. $500 million over benchmark. That's quite a bit. And once again, that's something that's unpredictable. So we're steering toward what we think are our priorities. And that, of course, number one, is educational funding. Now, fortunately, we have a governor that was a selectman, just like yourself, so he understands how municipal government works. And we've impressed upon the importance of funding education and keeping the promises of the past. Not just Chapter 70 funding, but also regional transportation funding. It's something that we never really lived up to at the state level, and we're starting to now. We think it's a perfect place to put a revenue surplus and to devote more funds to. It's something that benefits every single town when you put money into Chapter 70. We still don't know how that formula is going to play out. The changes to it have not been enacted or agreed upon yet, but we're putting a record amount in that Chapter 70 formula. I think we're increasing it by $270 million. So it's a $250 million increase into the Chapter 70 fund. I think it's the biggest increase in over 10 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, but you've been at this a lot longer than I have. But it's something that every state rep, every state senator has impressed upon the governor, and he's come through. So we're happy for that.
So if I can just jump in for a minute, one of the things that there's a lot of momentum building around, and particularly it's building around when we return in September, is trying to address the problems that we have with the foundation budget. You all, I know, have been students of this for a while, so you understand that the foundation budget was first enacted back in 1993. And it was supposed to be reviewed periodically to make sure that it was keeping pace with the actual cost of educating students.
Yeah, that's not.
Unfortunately, it never was until a number of us, Lenny included, and Representative Brad Hill also was very active on the House side in this, and there were a number of us in the Senate, fought to say we need to have a serious review of the foundation budget. And we got legislation passed that actually created a foundation budget review commission. And it issued its report back, I think now it was 2015. And essentially what it confirmed was there was a growing gap between the cost of educating a student and the amount of money that was being provided for that purpose by the state. And that gap was estimated at anywhere between $1.5 billion and $2 billion. And so since the report was issued, we have been trying to find ways to close the gap and address it. And so we've made some inroads. The Foundation Budget Review Commission report made 4 basic recommendations. One of them had to do with English language learning. Another one had to do with students that are at the poverty level as measured by free and reduced lunch eligibility. But the 2 major ones were the cost of health insurance for teachers and the cost of special education. And so if you added all those deficiencies up as of 2015, we've had a very significant gap. Over the last couple of years, we've been trying to address the health insurance issue, and so we have been putting more money into it. And as Lenny points out, this year, because of the robust nature of our tax returns, we're gonna put a lot more into it. So if you go to page 10, and you can see these are statewide numbers. And if you look across the top line, it tells you the numbers for chapter 70. And I think it's important to look, you can see here, we did a couple of years for comparison. You can see what the number was in fiscal year 18 was about $4.7 billion. In 19, it was 4.9. But this year, we are going to be providing $5.176 billion for a net increase of about $268.5 million. And what that reflects is the understanding that we have to begin to close that gap in a very serious way now that we have the resources to do it. Now, here's the challenge.
What about if there's a downturn?
Well, if there's a downturn, we're gonna have to try to deal with that, and so that's the issue, is sustainability, or one of the issues. The other issue, Mr. Chairman, is the idea of how we fairly do this. And so there are a number of bills pending right now which basically rework the foundation budget and change some of its assumptions, right? There are basically 11 moving pieces to the foundation budget, and those bills impact some of those pieces, but not all. So the governor has a proposal, Representative Tucker has a proposal, Senator Chang Diaz has a proposal. In the past, we have, in the Senate Republican caucus, also offered proposals, and we have one again. But our focus is more on the question you just asked, which is how do we pay for this over the long term as opposed to changing the formula. Those bills differ significantly. And one of the things that legislators like Lenny and I have to pay attention to is how they affect our communities. And here's part of the problem. One of the challenges that suburban school districts face is that we have declining enrollment but increasing cost. And so eventually it's causing a strain on the budget now, but eventually it's going to cause a real dilemma. And so as we look to these bills that are looking for the foreseeable future to change how we fund education, we have to make sure that that issue is addressed. Certainly the urban communities have a lot of issues, they have a lot of need, and no one begrudges them getting significant amounts of additional funding. But we also have to think about the structural deficit that will continue to occur if we do not address the problems of suburban school communities. Here's the other thing to keep in mind that a lot of people haven't focused on, is that as we change the foundation budget, we're increasing the amount of money the state has to spend. We're also increasing the amount of money that you have to spend, because required net school spending is going to go up. And that's why you see a debate when you oftentimes read or hear or see press accounts of this issue. You'll see that there's a debate about should we phase this in over 5 years or 7 years or maybe even longer. Well, part of that debate is about sustainability. If you spread it out, obviously there's less volatility. Maybe you could have more stability as you do this. But the other piece of it is trying to make sure that school districts have enough time to come up with their own sources of funding to be able to meet the requirements of increased school spending. So there are a lot of things in play here, and having been in the legislature for a very long time, I have not seen the momentum that we have right now around making major changes.
For the moment, the calculation is done the old way, right?
That's
Okay. How, at least for this fiscal year?
Yes, primarily yes.
You think it would change, you think it would actually change this fiscal year?
There are some adjustments in the number that you see here. One of the reasons that $268 million increase is so large is because it's a down payment on addressing some of the issues that are in the Foundation Budget Review Commission report. And let me give you just one more example to, I hope, add some clarity. One of the issues with special education is that in 1993, they used a relatively low number in the formula for enrollment in special education programs. And if you talk to the people that actually wrote the formula, they will tell you that was an aspirational number. That's a number they hoped to get to. They never did. And in fact, the number has grown. And so one of the changes that are almost universal to all the bills is to increase the percentage of students enrolled in special education. So some of that money is reflected in the increase. We haven't changed the formula, but we put the dollars on the table so that when we do, there'll be resources there to accommodate the change. I'll stop for a minute. Let me get the microphone.
No, that about nails it. Other than, something we get asked about a lot is regional transportation. And we've always been, the state has always promised to fund that at 100%. We never got close to 100%, but this year, looking at the paperwork, this is accurate, 85% reimbursement this year. I think in previous years, we were around 70 or 75%.
That's a significant increase, definitely. I know it was like 70 or something, yeah.
Let me just add a little clarity to that. So we did try to get to 85%. We actually only made it to 82.5, but it's a significant increase. And what happened on the Senate side, and I didn't have the documentation for the House side, but I know there was a similar effort, is that I had offered the amendment to go to 85. We couldn't get to that number, so Senator Goby came in and we collaborated and did a further amendment. We got to 82.5%, and that's significant. And one of the good things about regional school transportation is that it doesn't go through the Chapter 70 formula. So we are not disadvantaged the way that we might be with other accounts because it's a very straightforward formula. And so that 82.5% is good news, and we hope to get to 100%.
So that is unaffected by economics of the community or anything like that? Okay.
Your ability to pay, or your, whatever they say.
And that's the main point, Glenn, is that it doesn't, there are a couple of things in this budget, and again, if we go back, you'll see there was an increase as well in circuit breaker, special education funding, so we could get to our statutory commitment of the 75% reimbursement. There are a couple of things that do not depend on the Chapter 70 formula, and that's why oftentimes people in our legislative delegation, and certainly Lenny and I, will focus on those things, because oftentimes you'll see a large amount of money poured into Chapter 70, and when you look at what Pentucket gets, it doesn't seem commensurate, and it's not. That's why if we put money into special education circuit breaker or regional school transportation, you get a much more direct result because the formulas are much simpler and much more straightforward.
It's all about your ability to pay your housing values, your medium income, and all that. So that we're always at a disadvantage of getting the money towards us in a proportional way of someplace like Lawrence and or
in
whatever.
Chapter 70.
In Chapter 70, correct.
So really, I would argue, and I'll just speak for myself, that the Foundation Budget Review Commission that we got put into play essentially did half of what needed to be done. And that was to determine, does the formula accurately reflect the cost of educating students? The other half, about the equity as between communities and how we measure ability to pay, I believe is an unresolved issue that we should revisit because of those issues. So for instance, how you measure a community's wealth is incredibly important because you can have a community where there are a lot of homes that have appreciated significantly in value, but the people who are living in those homes bought them 40 or 50 years ago, and they're now living on a fixed income. So when you say that that community is wealthy, well, in one respect it might be, but in another it's not, because those folks don't have the income to keep up with those increases in inflation.
I know we have a Board of Library Trustees that want to get out of here at 7:30, but I have a question on special ed. So I know you guys have had some forums, I guess, on this recently. Maybe you have, haven't you? I'm almost positive you have, because this is something that cripples a school district. And I'm not saying that. Hypothetically, we vote our budget, obviously in May at our annual town meetings, and then we have a certain amount of money for our special education for our district, and then an individual moves into our district in August that requires a high-level need of special education, which that individual should get. I'm not questioning that. But then now we have to find out that because we've already voted our budget, we have to now find $242,000 in a school department budget, and maybe even have to lay off teachers to try to be able to accommodate the needs of that individual. Is there anything in the state to try to help us do that or help districts do that? Because that cripples, you know what I mean? That cripples especially a district like ours. You know what I mean? If somebody comes in with very high needs, and and I'm not saying they shouldn't be met. They should be met.
because it can happen after the budget is already created.
Or it can happen 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And by law, we have to provide those services. So that means other teachers will have to be cut, or whatever, programs, whatever, because the budget's already been voted.
So, one thing we can follow up with Angus a little bit about is that we created a number of years ago the ability for a community to create essentially a self-insurance fund as against that extraordinary cost, that surprise cost, so that you could put a little bit of money away and carry it forward from year to year
Okay.
as a hedge against that, which some communities have done, but not a lot.
Mhm.
In addition to that, we are constantly looking at this particular issue. And interestingly enough, a number of months ago, we asked the superintendents in our area to explain why, if enrollment was going down in a lot of our school districts, costs were going up as dramatically as they are.
Special ed.
And one of the answers was special ed, that the sped population is getting larger and more complex and more costly. Now, we all agree that those students deserve everything that we can give them to maximize their educational opportunities, so that isn't an issue. But what we have tried to look at is, can we confront some of the costs? So for instance, one of those costs is the cost of transporting the students to outside placements. And in many cases, we are told that the cost of transportation can be as much or more than the cost of tuition for the outside placement. So there is a commission meeting right now to talk about how we can try to address those costs in a more cost-effective way. So for instance, we're told that the pool of bidders for that transportation for those contracts is not very large. And so there isn't a lot of competitive bidding going on to try to control that cost. So we're trying to look at things like that.
Okay.
And in fact, our colleague, Representative Hill, was the minority leader in the House's appointment to that group.
Mhm.
My appointment was Superintendent Forget from Triton. So that's a pretty diverse committee, and they're trying to find ways to address that. We're also looking at modes of delivery. So in the Senate version of the budget, I secured an amendment that would study the modes by which we deliver special education. So collaboratives, in-placement, out-placement, all of those things. Unfortunately, it didn't survive the conference process, but it's something that we're gonna be back at, trying to get again, so that we can look at, are we delivering this education in the most cost-effective way? So, to answer your question, and it's too late to say in short version, because that didn't happen, but we look at this every single day, because every school district we talk to tells us the same thing, that the costs are a major challenge for them.
Especially after the budget's voted.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other good news?
Yes, the governor, as you know, signed the budget and vetoed no earmarks, which is, I don't know if it's ever happened before, it certainly hasn't happened since I've been in the legislature, which means that the one that we worked on, and again, with Angus's help, we were able to redirect to a good use of the Page School, did in fact survive, it is law, and we will now work with the town to get that money out to where it should go.
Well, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the town, Senator. Yes.
The library committee was very helpful, they were very communicative with us, they talked to us on an almost daily basis, and we were able to communicate that between our 2 offices and Angus, so it's helpful to keep those lines of communications open, very helpful.
We're actively corresponding with the facilities manager over in Pawtucket and with a resident who initially brought this initiative to my attention. I have a call with her tomorrow. The truth has been shared.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and the message that we would deliver on this front is that worked exactly how it should.
Yeah.
You all identified our priority, we found an opportunity to fund that priority, so the conversations we have are incredibly important, so let's continue that, and as you see priorities, let us know. We're also working on the bridge issue that I know Selectman Kemper has raised in the past, and again, we're working with Angus on that.
It's not the bridge to nowhere, it's the bridge to West Newbury.
There's a lot of residents about that, let's rely on that, and the municipalities, Newburyport and West Newbury. So there's 2 state reps and 2 state senators working on it. Letters got written up today, those will be sent out soon to apply for a grant to help fund the construction of it. And, yeah, it was all hands on deck, and everyone kind of pulled together for that. It worked out very well.
Excellent.
Great.
And just one more thing, completely unrelated. I believe Senator DeZoglio chaired a session today and got approval for the creation of a Merrimack River Watershed Council. This council will start to meet to discuss ways to deal with the raw sewage and other pollutants entering the Merrimack River. Something that a lot of people have asked about, what are we doing about it, and took the first step today. And
Is it a council or a task force?
I think it's a council, isn't it?
It's called a council, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Any luck on getting some federal funds so we can get New Hampshire and us kind of working together? So, you know, because I hear that Manchester, New Hampshire is a bigger,
Manchester and Nashua, I think.
one of the
systems
biggest.
in New Hampshire, I think they've done more than we do. We
Yeah.
have 3 systems, Haverhill, Lowell, and Lawrence. I think New Hampshire surpasses their output as far as raw sewage in the river.
Mhm.
And the good news is, we have a new congressperson up there, Lori Trahan, who's been all over this. Her district has pretty much the entire river as it comes into Massachusetts. She met with all of us. And, you know, I think it's gonna come down to an infrastructure bill from Congress. You can tell me when that happens, your guess is as good as ours. But the good news is, we finally do have some bills submitted for that. It's a multi-state effort, and it's gonna require the feds to get involved in that. And
Okay.
it's a huge amount of money, but it's something that we took a very important first step on, I think, this year. And just as an aside, CSOs are just one issue with that river. If you go to the EPA website, you'll see there are 4 major issues. CSOs are just one of them. There's also illicit hookups to drainage that results in raw sewage in the river as well. But this is something that council will be tasked with dealing with. And looking forward to getting that rolling.
And there already has been one sort of unofficial meeting because the legislation hadn't passed yet.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that you know about it because everybody is invited. And we did have representatives of the federal legislative delegation at the last meeting. I think we all know that there's gonna be a massive infrastructure cost to doing what we need to do here. But there are also lesser costs that we've started to address, like installing generators at some of these plants so that when there is a storm and when there would otherwise be an overflow discharge, we have power to prevent that from happening. So we are addressing it from a number of different fronts. I will tell you my opinion is that the most difficult and the most significant factor is going to be the non-point source discharge that's happening, whether it be from runoff or illegal discharge. Those are going to be the toughest things because it's going to be very costly to address them, but we need to do it.
It's always only money.
It's gonna be a big project to find all the non-point source, or, you know, to try to find and classify and characterize the non-point sources, because there's thousands of them.
That's right.
Tens of thousands of them.
It took a long time to get to this point. It'll take a long time to fix it. But like I said, this year we took a really important first step on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
All
time.
right, thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
I will leave these in case anybody is an insomniac and needs something to read. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Next item is a joint meeting with the library board for appointment of a new trustee.
And the way we have McCarron, he can tell me if I get anything wrong, but this is an appointment that's made jointly between the members of the library board of trustees and the board of selectmen. And the library board has proposed limit the 2 candidates as a recommended candidate. Tom Salvo, I understand is here tonight.
And this position lasts until the next town election. So it doesn't fulfill the person's seat. It then just lasts until the first Monday in May.
Is that correct, Mark?
Yes,
Okay.
and there'd be three-year terms normally, and this next one will be a 1-year term
To fill the seat that was vacated by the person who moved.
Okay.
in May 2020.
Sorry, I was just, because you're not on a microphone.
Yes.
And we probably have 7 people listening at home, so I want to make sure. We understood, Mike. Waiting for some big news.
So, Tom, do you want to come up?
Okay, so, yeah,
How-
now, you guys were posted, right, for this room?
I'm sorry?
This is a posted meeting?
So you
Okay.
you don't have to
Okay.
get out, whatever. So somebody just needs to make a motion, and then we all vote.
Make a motion.
But you need a microphone, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Told you to sit down.
Marcia
Sorry.
Salas-Mora, Chair of the Board of Library Trustees. I'd like to make the motion to appoint Tom Salvo as a library trustee.
Second. What, you want to talk about yourself, Tom, at all,
Yeah.
since we dragged you down here, or you have any questions?
No,
You can read?
I'd be pleased to serve on the Board of Trustees.
Perfect. He would be pleased to serve on the Board of Trustees.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So what's the,
Oh.
what's the actual number? Head count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and Rick 9. Nothing. Just the count.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Now, you have to go through certain things, can Mike, you have to be sworn in and all that kind of stuff.
Certain things.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, we didn't tell you about that when you applied, but there are certain things that you're gonna have to do now.
I just wanted to, I'm Fred Shinanya, I'm Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees, and we had intended to introduce Corinne Flaherty, our new library director, to you tonight. Unfortunately, her family had a medical emergency, and she, not involving her directly, but she had to take care of some kids, and she couldn't attend tonight. Perhaps at some point in the future, we'll introduce her to you directly, but we were very pleased to select her, and if you have a chance, stop by the library and introduce yourself if you've not already done so. Anyway, just wanted you to know that at some point, we will formally introduce her to you.
Thank you. Because that's something I wanted to do and I forgot, so now I'll put it back on my notes in my phone. Thank you.
Very much.
Next item, reappointment of Julie Boyer to the CIC. I'll make a motion to do that.
Second.
Any discussion?
I guess Julie is not here.
That's right, for reappointments.
Oh, you, okay, great.
And I've worked
Because I'll be on the same committee, I was hoping to be here, but that's okay.
I worked with her on that for a few years,
Yeah.
very enthusiastic,
Yeah,
good,
great, great.
good member.
When, we kind of, if it's a new appointment,
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's a reappointment, there's no need to come in.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Appointment of Peter Ringenbach to the car post. Is Peter here? Peter, come on up.
Yep.
I can speak louder.
No, it's not for, this is for the broadcast to the
Not
world.
for here.
Oh, okay. Good evening.
You're being immortalized in real time.
You'll be on YouTube tonight around 1 o'clock.
No, that's great.
Anything you want to say, or?
No, for those of you who I don't know personally, I've lived in West Newbury for 40 years, so I'm a relative newcomer. And I've served on 2 other committees here in town. We look forward to being a part of this. I'm an architect by profession and spent a portion of my career doing preservation work. So I think I have some of the skill set that will help move the ball down the street.
Seems like you're
That's-
well suited.
that's
for it.
great.
That's what we're looking for, quite honestly.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that Peter Ringenbach on the Carpost Building Committee. Term
Till
ending
June 15th?
of 2020.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks for volunteering.
We'll see. Good night.
Good night. Next, a special event application, Harborside Half Marathon, and that will be November 10th, 2019. We have an approval contingent signed off by the police chief, an approval signed off by the fire chief. It does say there will be, there may be porta potties placed. It says they will be delivered on Friday and removed Monday after the event. I hope that's the case.
If you'd like, I didn't arrange for them to come in, which was more of an oversight than by intent. So if you'd like to bring them back in 2 weeks, I don't think there'd be any harm in delaying action.
I had, if everyone just looks at the map,
Yeah.
I just had a question about I don't know if this is important, but if you look, going down Middle Street and then onto Chase Street, and they go up and down on Chase Street. So I assume there must be like a short little turnaround on Chase Street, which seems
Probably so they hit their half.
just
Yeah,
to
they
probably
need that- they need that.
an extra quarter mile or something,
So they
yeah.
get their 13.1, that's probably the.
That's probably what it is. I don't know if that's gonna create a problem or not. That was my only question, but
My question.
probably,
I'm sorry. Do you want to finish?
go ahead.
Sorry. Have we done these guys before? Have they run a road race here before? I'm sorry, that was the question.
I don't know.
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't remember that name,
neither do I.
Harborside. Do you, Glenn? No.
But it's local sports. Loco, like L-O-C-O, Loco.
603 is a,
So are they a for-profit organization? We always generally ask for a donation for one of our
so
things in town?
I would think we should put it on, to
I can bring it back.
find out about that, don't you? Yeah. Is it for profit or is it a charitable event? We don't know. All their application seems in order, but it doesn't say that. Okay.
And this is a pretty,
It says only 5 miles is in West Newbury,
I
which
know,
I can't believe. It looks like most of the races
It's
in
because
West
you're going back
Newbury.
and forth in the same route in Newburyport. If you look there, arrows go both.
Okay.
yeah, because that's what I was gonna say too. Looks more like it's in this town.
Yeah, because it's all double, that's, back and forth on the
Yep.
same stretch there. So we figured, 13.1 miles, so it's it says it's 8.1 miles in Newburyport then, if it's 5 miles.
Okay, yeah.
So, 4
And
miles.
they are crossing the bridge in question. I assume they know that.
That's an excellent question, because they know that?
I'm asking, they can walk over the bridge, they can't take vehicles, but they could run.
They can walk over?
But if they have like if they have like a lead vehicle or whatever,
Told them they can't bring any vehicles over.
it's not gonna work, no.
Good, at least then they're cognizant of the area, because some people just put the Google stuff up, because one person came before. And, I don't know, a couple years ago. Okay,
Okay, so,
let's ask him to come in.
let's ask,
Or
let's
do
ask,
you want to have a ring of questions that Angus can ask him? And if they're,
instead of having let's just, Angus, you
answer-
ask them, are they a profit or a nonprofit? If it's a for-profit, we would like some kind of donation to a charitable
the Carpost
thing
Committee.
in the town, or whatever.
Not the car, what's
car
going on, what's
post,
going on right
yes.
now?
Compost gift to a gift account.
Yeah,
The car post gift account. We did the historical, we've done the library, we've done
we've done athletic fields,
athletic
yeah.
fields. Next one will be, well, want to do the land? No, okay, never mind.
It's the consulting
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Good.
Maybe they'll want to contribute to the bridge account.
Yeah.
That's gonna have to be
Okay,
something like the Boston
they're gonna have to up their game.
Sponsors. Okay, thank you. I make a motion that we approve, that we approve this permit pending the outcome of affirmative stuff by Angus with the people who are running it. I just don't think they need to come back in again.
No,
If
okay.
they answer all our questions, not come back in.
So are we actually asking them to make a donation? Is that
Yes.
part of the,
If it's a for-profit, yes,
Yeah.
it's,
okay, but.
there's a word that begins with S, but I'm not gonna say it.
Yeah, so.
We don't tell them the
No,
amount.
I'm just kind of, it's kind of open-ended.
It is.
So are you talking about
I noticed-
a dollar figure?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Because I noticed one time, I was thinking another figure, and the guy that was doing it had a bigger figure, so I was glad I wasn't saying the figure that I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because I think that was a library one, then they got more than, we're not trying to blackmail them, it's an inconvenience to our town, there's some things going on.
And
There
if
is
they're
permit
making a
fee,
profit
and
off.
they're making a profit, we
yeah.
just ask for a small donation to a charitable cause in town.
Okay.
There was something I came up with a bunch of years
We'll-
ago.
We will trust Angus to come up with a nice figure.
Yep,
Don't feel any pressure, though.
so I made the motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 I make a motion to establish a car post building gift account pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A. So we have to establish an account so that we can
Second.
receive money for,
So the discussion is the explanation you were just giving.
Yes.
Which is we need to establish an account in order to have funds to go into.
right.
And these accounts, the fire department has one, the police department has one.
The library.
Library has one, there are a bunch of these in town that if sometimes families leave money to the fire department because of the nice things they've done to them over the years, or the police department. And I think the library's got $1 million in it. If I'm not,
Not in the gift fund.
oh, the endowment one? Okay, sorry. Thank you for correcting me.
Basically, the way that works, Rick, is the funds stay there, they carry over from year to year, unless they're expended for the purposes that the board authorizes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who was the second on that one?
I was.
Right, all right.
I would make a motion to accept funds that have been gifted to support the car post building and to be placed into the newly created gift account. We have received a gift on behalf of the Hall Family Foundation in the amount of $7,500.
I'll second that.
Discussion, first thing is thank you, I would say.
Correct? Yes.
A resounding thank you.
Yes.
And, oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Is there a legal thing we haven't done right?
It might be more clear if you make the motion that I suggested.
I move to accept gift funds for the
Oh.
said car post building gift account and authorize the expenditures of such funds for the study, support, maintenance, repair, and all other costs pertaining to the building and grounds commonly referred to as the car post.
Yes, that
Okay.
When you
I will accept that as a friendly amendment.
And I'll s-
Okay?
And was that Hall, Hall, Family Foundation?
Yes,
And that's all you have right now, is Hall, and that's what you have right now for donations?
correct.
We get a second, or were you seconded, and then, okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think you didn't have to read that.
Whoa. Item F, the town manager report on the funding to support the architectural and engineering services that are planned.
So, as you know, in your last packet, you had a memo that looked very similar to this, that had a proposed breakdown of the source of funds to support the total vendor budget of just over $29,000. Based on the board's receipt tonight and authorization of the $7,500 in gifted funds, that brings, basically there are two changes since the last memo. One is the confirmation of that amount. Secondly, we did have unexpended balance in 2018 warrant article, which I proposed in the packet, that was intended for the purpose of repairs to Page School, Children's Castle, and town buildings. There's a remaining balance in that article of about $5,500. That follows the completion of a recent mitigation project for Page floors. So working with the DPW director and the town accountant, I'd like to put that $5,500 toward this initiative, which would leave a total of $8,785. We would hit the operating budget. With that said, we have had a verbal offer of more than $4,000 in private donation. So if that comes in, that would reduce the hit of the expense budget. But even if that didn't come in, I'm very comfortable that we, with the funds that we'll receive tonight, with the CPC's approval of $7,500, I'm very comfortable that we have the funding to authorize the full scope of work that the consultant has proposed. But I did want to make sure, because you had a memo from me that set out certain funding assumptions, and that's different, I wanted to make sure you had updated information in terms of where the funds would come from.
This is actually much better now in terms of actual costs out of the town budget.
It is.
Wayne, could I ask you a question? So the warrant article from April of 2018 to the do the mostly to, it was mostly set up to do repairs related to the Page and the Children's Castle. Do you feel, I just don't want it so that the public knows that we're shortchanging any of the repairs that were needed there. So you feel that everything there that this was intended for got accomplished?
That's correct. So there's still money in the line to do other stuff, but we estimated the work for the second floor was $30,000, and the actual bills are coming in at around $24,500. So
Okay.
A little over $5,000 remaining. So we estimated $30,000. It's coming in. The actual bills are coming in at a little over $20,000.
Okay.
So
You said they're coming and it's not completed though, it's still
They're in.
ongoing?
No, they're in. I
So
signed
it's
them
closed
there,
out basically,
and
yeah.
should be it.
Okay, and then this will close out that fund?
No, the article's still open with other projects that we promised to do also. There's funds remaining in there for other
Okay.
projects. I don't list those things, but we took out each item when we gave it a cost estimate.
Okay.
That's how we came up with the asphalt request, and that item was for $30,000, and we're at $24,500.
Okay. And you're confident that none of the others will overrun?
I hope not, but so far so
Right,
good.
right.
We've been good in the last couple of projects. It's nice when you use local guys and call around and get three quotes, spending over $30,000 on some of these things. So.
Yeah.
Do we have to, we don't have to vote on anything related to this, no, no.
Before you get off the car, can I just say, where do people send donations to? How does that process work?
So they would be received by the town treasurer. Now that the board has voted to establish a gift account, any fund should simply specify Carpo's gift account to make sure they go to the right place. And then upon funds, they would be brought back to this board to formally vote to accept them and authorize their use.
Okay, so just again,
So
send it
just
to
to
the
the
town
finance-
treasurer,
That's
the
right,
finance
yeah,
department.
yeah, finance department or treasurer.
The next item, G, is adoption of a new community compact policy related to indirect cost allocation. The town, and this is mostly concerned with indirect costs related to the water department. The town has calculated indirect costs that are accrued to the town from the water department, and the water department in turn reimburses the town for those. The community compact recommendations from the Division of Local Services from the Commonwealth has a more detailed policy on creating the indirect cost application, and we would like to move to using their version of it rather than how it has been done by the town in the past. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I just want to speak a little bit to the process we went through on this. What you have in your packet is basically showing both the proposed new policy, indirect cost allocation, that's the first 2 pages, and then the second 3 pages shows the red line edits from what the community compact had provided to what we're adopting. And what you see is in their initial draft, they had set out 4 different alternatives, all of which are totally defensible and legitimate. And the one that most closely approximated the process we were already using is number 3. So basically we struck out the others and just went with number 3. And so it basically codifies what the town has done over many years. It's a little more specific. It's good to have it in writing because there's no ambiguity. But we did review this with the finance staff and with the water superintendent, and then we brought it to the water commission back in January, February, and what you have in front of you is in the form that they recommended. So it basically locks in what has happened in the past. So, and I should also say, you'll be seeing more of these community compacts, because now that the bicentennial has passed and school vote and some of those other kind of big time issues, we're definitely been refocusing on those, and there were a total of 19 policies. If the board votes this tonight, that would be 6 approved, so that we're about a third of the way there. And some of them, I think, could be brought forward with little additional amendment. Some are going to need some more work just to make sure that the staff responsible for the various responsibilities are fully apprised as to how their job is changed. So, but some of them I think are very straightforward. So my goal is to, rather than bring forward a package of 8 or 10 of them, I'd like to chip away at it 1 or 2 at a time.
What would even be the motion on this?
Well, so last December, the board met and voted to adopt the capital policy, the debt management policy. So it would just be a motion to adopt the indirect cost allocation policy as proposed.
So moved.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Angus. I was trying to get the proper motion
Yeah.
out of it. Thank you.
Next item, a recommendation to possibly increase the fee for the street opening and trench permits. Wayne, do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
So as you're aware, the bylaw passed back in the spring to give the authorization to the public works to direct it to issue street occupancy permits and trade permits. And at that time, we decided to look at the application, see what our policy was, and try to write our own policy to make sure we're following the policy. And I created an application, I don't know if you put the application in.
I did.
Okay, so I created that 6-page application process, we went from a smaller application process to a more detailed process. And at the time, I was looking at the fees and realizing what it takes to actually issue a permit, and it's not just come in and I sign a piece of paper and you walk out the door. This time is a lot involved, especially with Concom and water department and what we expect our streets to look like when they're done. So I did a little, my memos, I called around, I went online, I see what everybody else was charging, and I did the same exact thing 3.5 years ago at my other job, and realized that we're giving everybody a buy and a half and we're losing money. For me to go out there, meet with the contractor, go back out there and issue the permit, as you can see the time, some of these things last from 1 to 2 hours, and charging somebody $35 for that. I just wanted to cover our costs at least, and that's why I did research, and that's why you came up with the estimate I came up with for the rate increase.
So,
I just want to say the actual
so
number.
in your new, who is the enforcement of trench policies? Like if they're digging trenches and they haven't even got a permit or gone through Concom and all that, and they just go into a neighborhood? Because if I'm not mistaken, a company did that twice in a neighborhood in West Newbury recently, until somebody stopped them. Is it still the building inspector?
So it's Glenn right now,
Mhm.
and Glenn and I are working on turning the power over to myself, and that's just notifying the state who the enforcement power is.
And then, is there, do we have the ability to fine them?
I believe you do under state law, whatever that max fine is.
And if they're repeat offenders, do we have the ability under that mass law to, they can't work in town anymore?
You could make policies and procedures, we could suspend their services if they're not actually following our guidelines. I think if you talk about the health law, circle one. there was a lot
Exactly.
of communication there, and I was in the middle of half of that communication too.
Say that again, sir?
I was in the middle of that too, so I probably
Oh.
was helping them.
So that's the reason why it was brought to my attention that,
Yes.
okay, so that's,
There
okay,
was
but you have it,
communication between departments too, so it wasn't actually the contractors 100% responsible for going back out there again.
Okay.
I want to be careful not to give him 100% blame for that.
no, but it just, as long as you have, it just came up, I said, well, who, so that's it. You have it under control. It's just a question that, I like to try to have answers, or I send them to Angus when people ask me, around town. Thank you.
So the $80, I came up with $90, actually it's 80, but for us to process the permit, it costs $10 to process each one through the software system that I have. So I wanted to make sure we grab that cost now. I didn't want to put a surcharge, I didn't want to put the upfront cost. So my actual time and what it cost the town to do the permit was, I think I kept it $82, and I added another roughly 10 to cover. That's how I came up with 90. A lot of towns that come up with 100, 150, and I think a lot of that's random. I try not to come up with a random number, I try to come up with a real number, I didn't want to just throw out numbers. So that's where you see it's a lot 90, because it really should be a lot 80, but we can charge $10.
Yeah, and I want to point out that permit link is, that's something the building department's been using for quite a long time. It's incredibly convenient for the contractors, it's great for staff, and it gives them a good tracking system so they know every permit that's open. So adding this street opening and trench permits to the permit link for the first time, I think is great. It's part of an overall effort to help to, consolidate and ensure more, hardwire the coordination and communication among the various permitting entities. So I think it's going to be a real convenience to the applicant and to staff. So well worth the $10 for.
Let me, go ahead, Glenn, I'll let then. Angus, we, on the previous agenda item, we talked about indirect costs. So if this is something that's not actually helping the water department, but if the water department has to go out and check on something related to someone pouring a driveway, should they be getting indirect costs from the town in the opposite direction?
So,
Just wondering.
so I don't think they're actually, the only thing they're doing is they're preparing the card in the office. They are doing office work.
Do they have to go out to the site or
They
not?
have to do an inspection, especially if there's no water out there. If there's no water, he's not going out there, where we have to inspect everything no matter.
Right.
I only goes out, I think he's going out there if there's an issue with it, but if it's just a water line, he'll give me the card and I include it with the.
Okay.
So he does have to research the card and give him the card. I mean, he does mark it out for a dig sake, but legally we can't charge for that service. We have to do a dig sake free of charge. That's not a charge.
Okay.
Be nice if we could, but, it's not.
Mr. Chairman, we're probably gonna wanna know more about trench permits than we really wanna know about tonight, but I'm gonna ask another question. I can understand the driveway permit and the opening and the street opening permit. I kinda get those, but when you have a price in here for a trench permit, could that trench be 100 feet long or 3 feet long? And does the price go up if it's bigger because it would take you more work? You know what I mean by that? I don't know. When I think of trench, I think
Well, you get a street opening permit that goes 300 feet too, so I mean, it's both. I mean, you can, so the only definition with the trench is keep in mind if it's deeper than 3 feet. So what's going on in most of the town right now is they're digging down 2 feet. So legally, it's not a trench. So we wanna make sure we get them on a street opening permit. Should utilities be under, as an engineer, every utility should be 3 feet under. We don't have that in this town. We don't have that a lot in the northeast. Every utility should be at least 36 inches down.
So
It's not the case here.
if National Grid has to do something on a gas line, do they have to get a trench permit?
Depends how deep it is.
Depends on how deep it is, okay.
And that's state law. That's not our bylaw, right?
Oh, so there's not a town standard?
Nope.
They're, and the state law allows them 2 feet?
Yes, as much as it's terrible, but yes, they are allowed. So the street opening permit, we could pass bylaws and rules and regulations for street opening, the town. The trench permit is a state law. We just follow the state law. There's no, oh, it's 3.5, it's okay. It's 3 inches, it's 37 inches, it's okay. No, it's 36 inches, that's it, it's a trench. So that's, we have to follow the state law, the street opening permit. We can follow our own law, which is standard construction practices right now. What we expect. Glenn, that's a great question about charging for the length of the trench. So in Newburyport, we did $2 a square foot because we were charging $25 and that was it, and you got your permit. I didn't want to jump there because I thought we'd make it a big step from $35 to $90.
baby steps.
Baby steps. But keep in mind, if you do a large enough trench, I could still, as a street opening permit, require them to pave the road. So I don't care about their money. I wash my hands and say, you can keep your money. You're responsible to pave the road. So we
In
still
a proper
have-
manner that's acceptable by you.
That's correct. So we still, they don't just come in and do a 900-foot trench and put coal patch and walk out of town and call it a day. We would say, no.
Okay.
That's,
I got you.
so.
Okay.
In a recent couple permits, if you notice, they were on newer streets, I required them to do an infrared patch, which means they come back 60 days later with the hot box and they actually have to heat the roadway and they heat the seams on the roadway and they infrared patch, so.
So do we need to vote on this increase, or is this just more of an informational thing, excuse me?
So the Board of Selectmen has the authority to set fees on the opening streets bylaw. Wayne technically has the authority to set fees on the trench excavating permit. Since it's being designed as a single consolidated application, I would recommend the board vote the fee change as proposed.
Okay. I'd make a motion that we approve the fee change as proposed to $90.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Wayne. I'm all trenched out.
The next item is the other end of the dirt. This is a proposal to establish a tree committee and a draft charge for said committee. Fred? Fred, so can you give us a little background of what the impetus for this is and so forth?
Sure, glad to do it. The idea arose in the Open Space Committee as something that would be a good thing for the town to have. And I'll explain sort of in a moment what this committee will and won't do. And then they contacted me, they contacted me and we talked about it. And in consultation with Wayne and Angus in part, and with the approval of the Open Space Committee and the Conservation Commission, we put together this charge for you to take a look at. Just so you'll know, I have a number of hats that I've worn in my careers, but I do have a master's in environmental biology, and I have worked as a scientist for a lot of years as well as a science educator. So this is something I'm interested in personally, as well as for the town. And in thinking about how to address this with you tonight, the best way that I can describe it is, if we had a town arborist, this would be essentially what the town arborist would be doing in conjunction with the tree warden, Wayne, the head of DPW. The idea here is maybe small steps is the way to think about it. What the committee would do or will do is provide information to private homeowners. As you know, the tree warden is responsible for public areas, public roadways, but we don't have anybody, or there's no resource in town to help homeowners with information, with avenues for funding from the state, and when they call up Wayne and say, hey, can you come look at a tree, and it's on their private property, that cuts into his time. And so Wayne has been very supportive, and he can speak for himself, in terms of wanting some help from people who can then help the private homeowners. What we won't do is be a regulatory body. So we're not going to be someone who says, yes, you can keep that tree, or no, you can cut it down. Rather, we are more of an information clearinghouse. And we sort of have two ideas in mind to start off. One is to see if private landowners in town have special trees that they would like to have us look at. If they can, it's not really historic trees, it's more size and type of trees that you may or may not know, but there's a register of champion trees in the state of Massachusetts, as there is in every state. And so it would be interesting to know, and so we've called them remarkable trees. Maybe they are special in some way. And it's simply a database that we would create. And that would be lodged in a website that we would create as well, which would contain a lot of information and links for people to access. We will work with Wayne as he requests. So he may well give us a call and say, gee, I got this call from somebody over in, Chase Street, and they have a tree they think is falling down, and it's on their land, and I really don't have time to, in the goodness of my heart, to go see it. Can you guys take over and take a look at it and help them out? Essentially, we're a clearinghouse for information more than anything else. As you can see from the charge, or at least from the mission statement above it, there's a lot of words like assist and provide education and provide information. That's our main goal for this tree committee. We would also be thinking about what community resources we have to enlist folks that may have some expertise in this area or some special interest. The idea for the committee would be that a 5-member committee, terms of 3 years. And the tree warden would be, and I'll see if I can get this exactly correct, an ex officio member of the tree committee. Let's see if there's anything else. And this also provides us the ability to make contacts with the state to seek funding. We are not going into this thinking we're going to be asking for large budgetary items from the town at all. But right now, we don't have a mechanism by which to tap into state resources that may be there.
Because there's no committee, you mean?
There's no entity. Private landowners can apply for certain programs, but there's no way that they would know about those programs.
Like,
They did a Google search and tried to wade through some of the challenges of some of the websites.
but in terms of what, say like, pest infestation or something like Dutch elm disease or something? I don't know what you're aiming at there.
So DCR has a very good program, and tree committees are usually the ones that are grabbing from the town. And inventory, insect issues, mostly, there's a lot of inventory ones. So inventory of public and private trees, where a tree commission would take the lead, because the town doesn't have the time or resources to do it, they manage the budget, they manage the software. EAB, they had a program for EAB, Emerald Ash Borer, it's a tree commission or a town to go after.
Okay.
And so I think a tree commission will have more traction or more respect to apply for that stuff than if they just, a group of 5 people just doing it.
And it would provide, with the website, it would provide information for individuals to pursue that, but it would also give us an avenue to apply as a town committee. Stewardship is really the word that the state uses a lot for forest protection. However you want to interpret that word, that's a magic word for them.
Do you anticipate that you'll be making recommendations for trees that people would plant, considering changes in habitat, climate change, basically changing temperatures and trying to, there's going to be a natural progression, but there is going to be a progression of temperature, but species aren't going to be able to keep up with that. So we're going to probably have to help species move. And so is that something you're thinking of doing, where you're going to be recommending, say, trees that might grow here currently and are near the northern end of the range, but in a few years they'll be closer to the southern end of the range, recommending planting such as that?
Absolutely, that's exactly the kind of information that if I was a homeowner buying a property in town that, let's say, was recently developed, the first thing that people do is put in trees.
Yeah.
And I've wasted a bunch of money on my own property putting in trees that didn't make it. And I don't know whether it was the species of trees or the place where I got it from, and I've had better luck at other places. And to me, that kind of information for a homeowner is significant, because trees are not cheap.
No. I have a couple of questions.
I get them for a buck a piece.
So you mentioned that you charge some discussion with the Open Space Committee. They haven't made a couple of people, but they haven't voted on this at all, on this last version, I think, if I'm reading this correctly.
And no, both the Open Space Committee, and we have a representative here, as well as the Concom, have voted unanimously to support this charge.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry if it...
It might have been my mistake. However, they have not commented on the latest version that is contained in the charge of the Selectmen.
No, Patricia's right there.
This was an email Fred you had sent back in June.
Okay, I'm just reading everything that I have here.
Sorry, then I apologize.
When we do this, we do it back, okay, got it, so that's mute. So when you talk about, you got Wayne involved, you got Angus involved, which is all good. Do we see increased work here for individuals, Angus and stuff? Do we see a budget? Do we see, I noticed some of your points in here that there might be some budgetary requirements, but,
Well, that.
yeah, okay, so you know how we're always like cognizant of, this sounds like a wonderful idea, but then all of a sudden, then we sit up here and say, awesome, that's terrific.
And Angus has
Okay,
more
see you
work.
later, Angus.
Right, well, that's,
You know what I mean? And then,
Yeah.
it all sounds great here, honestly, but then we don't have to do much.
so Fred had initially approached me months ago, probably March, I'm not sure, but it was months. And, you know, my initial, we were in the ramp up to town meeting. Anyway, long story short, when we met to go over it, those were exactly some of the concerns I expressed, you know, limited staff time, limited ability to support. And one thing I was very cautious about is any suggestion that this would be a regulatory entity. I didn't want to get into a situation where, you know, the planning board or the, you know, ZBA or Concom was tabling an issue because, oh, we want to see what the tree committee thinks. That, you know, that's, I was concerned about that. So what you
Those are
see
good
in front of you
concerns.
is basically I think the third draft of the charge. There were, so, you know, Fred and whoever else is working on it, who's been the point of contact, is been very responsive on updating the charge to be responsive to the questions and concerns that Wayne and I had initially raised. So I think if the way it's set out is basically, as he said, is you know, to help if help is needed, and then to do some things, I think, independently, that where the town website and social media would be a good vehicle for them to get information out. But the way they've kind of conceptualized this, I'm not expecting really much staff impact. There's always some staff impact, you know, getting people.
There has to
on the
be.
website, you know, so, and just getting, but it seems, I think they hear what I'm saying, and
Okay.
I think it's intended.
And I think the other thing that I was actually very pleased at was that Wayne thinks it will actually help him and reduce the potential for him to be called out to a homeowner who just has a question, which is, I think it's an appropriate sort of partnership, if you will, between this committee and Wayne's work as tree warden.
You know, one, I don't have the red line in front of me, but I'm just seeing different sentences that I know we have our fingerprints on. For instance, you know, there's the reference to meetings and ex officio, and, you know, obviously Wayne, you know, his day starts at 7, so evening meetings are, you know, tougher, and I want to make sure those are strategically used. So, you know, having him ex officio was fine, but I wanted it clear, as it is in here, that attendance at the meetings of the tree committee shall be at his sole discretion. So, you know, it doesn't become just this thing that's like, you know, he's got really busy times where he's
Right.
lots of hours. So there are some things, if you saw the red line from version 1 to what you have in front of you, there's a lot of changes that were made that are responsive to what I was looking for.
Okay. So, you're looking, Patricia, did you mind if did you want to speak on this at all? Are you here for this?
I'm just here to support it, to confirm with open space, given the big vote, and I'm still in favor of establishing.
So, Patricia or Fred or Wayne, tell me a little bit about just other communities, what they do in this
I
regard.
think Fred is happy that you asked him that question, because he just pulled a bunch of notes up.
You got a lot of cards there. Yeah.
I've got a list of neighbors, and then I think Wayne can reflect on this from his Newburyport experience. Newburyport, Amesbury, Topsfield, Ipswich, Rockport, Haverhill all have tree committees or urban forest committees or something that relates to that. And then there's a bunch of others throughout the state. I think I got up to somewhere around 34, 35, just with a quick Google search. So this is not breaking new ground at all, especially up in this area where we're fortunate to have the forests that we do have, and we don't have such a lot of urban development where the stress on having trees remain in place is a lot greater than what we have. We have the luxury of all the forest lands we have.
I mean, just look at the Newbury Tree Commission, they're amazing, and they were a huge resource for me. I came up with great ideas, but I didn't have no staff to do it. So I go to a monthly meeting, and I'm like, I came up with this great idea, and somebody on the committee would take it on and write the grant, go after the money, and run the program. And one of the programs was to survey all the trees in town on an iPad, put it in on the Merrimack Valley.
All the trees,
All the trees that are on public property.
Doesn't matter about the size?
Nope. And I thought it was a great idea to have that, because we got that 8 years ago. We did a quarter of it before we got tired and got distracted and moved on to other things. But they inventoried every tree, they got volunteers, they went out to DTCI to get money, and I was just a guide, and I just signed the paper every time the bills came in, and it got paid out of the grant. It was a huge resource to have. And I also reached out to them when I was having a conflict with a resident about a tree that I was saying was a high hazard, and the resident said it wasn't a high hazard. And I used the tree commission as somebody to help guide us and as a mediator at times. Not like I had to go with what they had to say, but I am not an expert with trees, even though I am the tree warden. It came with the job. I'm not an expert at trees, where we have a group of people who are pretty darn close to being experts in trees, and they just need to guide guidance on what I should be looking for. So it was an asset for myself personally.
So, I would like to make a
Just
motion.
to amplify, we will not be inventorying all the trees in West Newbury.
Unless we get the grant.
Even with the grant, we're looking at significant and remarkable trees.
I was trying to, years ago on my previous property, I was trying to figure out how many trees I had one time. And
You back up on the big forest there.
And
Did.
I was thinking it was like 10,000 just in my my lot. It's unbelievable.
Now, do you take into account the Christmas trees?
Okay,
I make a motion that,
we're branching out here. Yeah. I couldn't. I had 1 million of them. I had to say one of them.
Yeah, let's see your roots. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we establish a West Newbury Tree Committee.
I second that.
Or should I put in that motion, I'm sorry, Rick. I make a motion that we establish a West Newbury Tree Committee comprised of up to five members. 3-year terms, and I'd like them to run, I don't want them to all end at the same time. So when we first set this up, so it's always nice to have somebody on there.
A little split up, yeah.
Because you could lose a whole committee, and then you get all new people, and there's not that one person to say, oh, no, we did that 2 years ago. You know what I mean by that? It's just nice to have a little bit of history there,
You bet.
to pass it along.
How about the first year, one term expires, the second year, 2 terms expire, the third year, 2 terms expires?
Okay.
Okay,
In terms are renewable.
right, right.
Okay. I'll take that friendly amendment. And then, anybody want to second that? Or you did already?
Second.
Okay, so then, discussion. I would assume that you'd want to be on the committee, and now how do we find people that in these, wonderful, you obviously took a lot of work on it. I know, I'm going to know more about trees and trenches than I did start.
I mean, this is really a great, the document is actually,
Yeah.
compared to a lot of other committees, is
And it made me,
great.
it made me
Yeah.
understand it. It was good. So whatever you did, it was good. Thank you. So do you have a group of people? Does Open Space going to recommend? How do we put it out in the newspaper like we always, or, Jen says, whatever, on our website? What do we do?
Well, we have 2 things, one of which is that the Open Space Committee had someone who was voiced interest when they were considering it, and I think that would be a source of people. Among the very first things we'll do will be to establish a website and to have Angus, either through that website or whatever magic he does, put out a notice saying a volunteer opportunity to serve on the tree committee. You'll notice that in the charge related to the members of the tree committee, we would like them to have some sort of expertise or demonstrated interest. And the way we phrased it was, which can include scientific, civic, or other relevant experience. So you don't have to be a scientist, but suppose you just are really interested in West Newbury historic trees or something, you know. I think enthusiasm will count a lot. That's at least our plan right now, but I'm certainly open to suggestions about how we could go about peopling the committee.
Yep. And then my other question would be, after we establish the committee, do we want to then vote on this charge? So then, I think that would be important.
Yeah,
So,
actually, that's kind of, we're trying to get back to that, which the committee handbook sets out that practice, where you create a committee to adopt a charge.
yeah, because some committees have languished and gone up in directions that we didn't think they were going. They didn't do it nefariously, but they didn't have any direction.
It was too vague.
Yeah, so they went on.
Well, you can thank Angus for not only showing me the handbook, but also working carefully on this charge to avoid just that issue, to make sure that your understanding and our understanding match.
Terrific.
Good.
So, let's do that. We'll call the vote on the.
So where are we at?
We have a
The,
motion and a second on the floor.
okay, all in favor of creation of the committee?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, we feel comfortable, does everybody feel comfortable establishing this charge? Just as, I guess, even though the new charge that has been vetted properly and endorsed by Concom, Open Space, and whomever, was on the back of an old email that it said that it wasn't, I do have the new one, right?
Yes.
You understand
Yeah,
you understand the
hasn't
process?
changed. It's just been through more of a formal.
Already-
And they voted on the one that you have in front of you, the new one.
They did, okay,
Yes.
okay.
See, I don't know what the new one is, I only have one. But,
Right.
so I just wanted to make sure, but it's on the back of this email that says that nobody's looked at it yet, so I just want to make sure. So, it's not dated or anything, but you want to vote on something here? What do we vote on?
I would make a motion that we vote on the charge for the tree committee as
Presented to us?
as presented. There's several goals and objectives. I don't think we need to read them all.
Mission statement and then, various goals.
Yeah. Okay, we can just read the long-range goals, there's only four of them. We can read that. To maintain a database inventory of significant and remarkable trees in West Newbury. Goal number 2, to assist and educate residents of West Newbury on ways to protect the forest of West Newbury in a manner that promotes the goals of a green community and helps to ameliorate the impact of necessary tree removal from the lands of West Newbury. Goal 3, to enhance the scenic value of West Newbury and advocate for the maintenance of a healthy and diverse West Newbury forest. And finally, to help to preserve for future generations, the aesthetic, cultural, and historic values associated with significant and remarkable trees in West Newbury and with a healthy and diverse West Newbury forest. As they used to say, all trees in West Newbury are above average.
Second. I think.
I have, for discussion, I do have a question actually on the goals. For every word, it says goals of a green community. So the Green Communities program, which is a DOER program, relative to sort of energy efficiency and energy use. And I'm not quite sure I understand how, that program, that sort of formalized program fits in there. And obviously, I'm an advocate for that program, and I'm an advocate for what you're doing, but I'm just not quite sure I understand how those two come together there.
Well, I think you're correct that it's indirect. But for example, I would think that people would be very interested in the value of shade trees as a way of reducing their energy consumption in their houses. How close do I put it? What kind of tree is going to be too big? Will my tree that if I planted here interfere with solar on my roof, for example? This is a general statement. So if there are very few goals that intersect with the committee, so be it. But it did strike me that being a green community on the energy side, it would be nice to at least be cognizant of that in the charge.
I think they're not saying a formal relationship.
Okay.
Yeah, more in the abstract, I think, more than the,
Okay.
If somebody would, like, all kidding aside, I'd plant a tree and then not knowing what it would, I've done it. I've taken trees from other people's houses and not even understanding the vastness of it, or it's a spreading tree, then all of a sudden I have 3 or 4 trees, and how big it's gonna be, and now I have to take it down, and the cost, it's just.
And usually, people would hire a tree company, as we have.
And I'm too cheap.
To do certain things, and that costs a bunch of money. And in some ways, I think we have resources in this town that we can use to help homeowners, not to the exclusion of tree companies, but at least to be able to give them some information that will advance the ball for them, and maybe they can save a little money, especially on something like that.
Like objective, somebody objective, okay. Wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
We have to vote on it. We haven't voted on the charge yet.
All in favor? Okay.
Aye.
Are we done with
It's been moved and seconded, so I'm just gonna give some more
All,
water.
in favor? Aye.
Good idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Fred, is there anybody else who's, specifically on board to be on the committee at this point?
No, there was, maybe Patricia knows the name of the person, I've forgotten on the open space. But no, nobody else. And I was told, oddly enough, that we have 2 trained arborists in town. Now, I suspect that they won't necessarily be a member of the tree committee, but they may well be an adjunct, if you will, someone we could call upon if needed. But I don't know. So there's nobody else, other than Wendy, I think she's volunteered.
No.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Wendy's she's gotta be at least 30 seconds left in a week.
Yeah. I'm in favor.
You're good.
All right, well,
Thank you,
very
Fred.
much. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, guys.
Item number J, policy goals for FY '20 and goal setting between departments, boards, and committee. One of the things Angus had broached the idea of having a sort of with all the committees in town, having a sort of town-wide goal-setting meeting early after Labor Day to sort of coordinate things so that different committees realized what the major objectives of other parts of the town are. My feeling was that have every committee vetted through the committee and then voiced through the chairperson to come up with 1 or 2 major goals that a particular committee or board would have for the year, and then that would be presented so that other people in the town with perhaps differing interests, interests that overlapped, would know what's going on. Sometimes we get focused on a small area and don't realize what other parts of the town are trying to accomplish. So that was the idea behind that, and Angus can speak a little more to that and see whether we might do that.
Well, I still haven't drafted a letter, so that's behind where I wanted to be. I didn't know if we wanted to go forward with a date, and I could work with you, Archie, as chair, to send a letter out, or whether we want to wait until the next meeting to have a letter before you for the board to review. If the goal is to do something in first half of September, I think we need to move more quickly. I have my eye on the second Monday, the 9th, just because it's a off Monday for the selectmen. but that could be too soon. But I do.
When you say, can I ask, do you mind if I ask? a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you say that's too soon, I don't think it's gonna be too soon for us. Are you,
No,
is it too soon for them to get
It might
their?
be, they might need to get their act together.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Not too, I don't think it's too soon for us, because we're listening to them.
Right.
So
yeah.
they're the ones who have to do all the heavy lifting, really.
Yeah, I think if you turn the clock back to, a year ago, I think we've got a better kind of handle on or at least, of course, I do. I'm just brand new, so. But I think we're able to kind of set out what's on the table already, and I think we could facilitate a really nice discussion if we can get people in the same room. I think for maybe a year from now, we could have something a little more, structured. But initially, I think there'd be some value in just getting people all in one place, and to have kind of a facilitated discussion with the kind of leading off, as you said, Archie, with kind of stating what the selectmen have already got on the table in terms of, major projects and initiatives.
Before we clear those, it's tough for us to come up with more.
Yeah.
We want to listen to them because their projects are really our projects, kind of, right? I think
That's
that
right,
was.
and that's for sure, yeah. And I think we'll find that, as I've heard about different things, not everything on this list is something I'm personally involved with. Some of it's stuff I'm aware of that's going on out in the community. So the goal is to try to get everything in one place. So, as we hear from boards and committees and learn about things that we're not already tracking, that's useful.
Mm-hmm. So the question after all that discussion was, do we think September 9th is a good date? And then you guys are gonna come up with some type of letter. So I think.
So September 9th is essentially a month from now, and if a committee has, so let's just think it through, a committee has,
Meetings, you mean?
what would have to have a meeting before or immediately after Labor Day in order to sort of get a committee-wide consensus of a couple of things that they think are important for the year. So do they have enough time to do that? That's the question.
Another option, I had started this just with, last year there was a real focus on fiscal year and getting goal setting at the beginning of the fiscal year. So that's part of what I'm kind of trying to shoehorn the time. It may be that, with the fall town meeting coming our way, maybe this should be something that should precede the goal setting for the budget process. So maybe something toward mid-fall.
Well, that's what I thought this was.
Yeah, that might be, something that's.
Prelude to the budget,
Right,
to give us some type of direction when we start the budget.
right, because at least from where I sit, I don't think the absence of goals between now and October or early November, whatever, is keeping staff and boards and committees from working. Everyone's hard at work on their goals, so no, we haven't, put out a call, put them all in one place, as has been the tradition. But I feel like, the departments are pretty focused and I've got a good idea of what the different departments are working on. So that would be more comfortable in terms of putting it together, to push it back, further into the fall.
But we should.
I'm sorry,
No,
I
no.
think earlier would be better personally. I just think it's.
Well, what about something in between the 9th and, see, it's all about we forgot about the committees and stuff, they have to meet. So
In other words, the selectman might, the chairman might have a particular axe to grind that other people on the committee disagree with, or it can't be just the chairperson's
Views.
no.
Yeah, it's gotta
So in order for them to present it, at least it has to have been gone over by the committee, and I don't know if we're making them create a meeting in August that,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So
Yeah.
I guess all, most committees are gonna meet at least once a month. Yeah, maybe early October, would that essentially give 2 months?
Yep.
I think that gives them more,
I like that idea.
better time, yeah.
Sounds good. But you guys are still gonna work on that letter?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd like to get it out ideally this week.
Yeah, I don't need to see it.
I don't need to see it.
Okay. And does anybody have any comments on Angus's different priorities that he has delineated here?
Well, to be clear, not everything here is something I would
Okay.
priority, some of it, but because I try to catalog everything, even the things that aren't active projects, just that it's basically an acknowledgement, it's been heard, we're aware of it, but you can't do everything all at once, so. But with that said, there are a lot of things on here that I think are very, very terrific projects.
Why don't can you outline, not tonight or whatever, but can you outline them for us, so we, in the future, if you could?
Yeah, one thing, if I could stop time, one thing I would love to do, which would be really great. As you know, there's a lot of great content in the packets that the board receives, and there's a lot of backup on different issues, and I'd love to, and actually, once we get the new position filled, this is something that perhaps could happen, is just like we, for some initiatives like the Middle Street Bridge, we set up a dedicated webpage and try to keep that populated as new information becomes available. But we don't have the bandwidth to do that for everything. But the board had previously authorized a couple of months ago to put the packets, the open session packets on the website. Once some of them are there, most of them aren't yet. But once those are there, we could have like a list of issues with hyperlinks to, this issue was covered at these meetings, and that way someone who wants to dig in and see the backup on that issue, we kind of give them a clear path. So it takes obviously some manpower to do that, but I think that the appetite is there in the community. When people hear about different issues, they go, I want to know what's going on with that.
Angus, we're head and shoulders above where we were, so
I think so.
thanks to you.
Yeah, no, I think we're definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, though, the idea of linking, you could link to the exact spot in the meeting agenda.
Exactly.
And, you could watch that,
Well, we had that.
section.
Oh, I don't know about the video. Oh, yeah, I was thinking of packets.
Well, we had that, Rick, with, what was it called? Granicus. We paid like 30-something thousand, well, you remember, Tom? It was a lot of money. And people, it went through there and people could, trench permit, and it would go zip, boom, right to that point in the meeting. They didn't have to fast.
Sounds like there's a downside to it. Sounds like it didn't work so well.
And then of
Didn't
course,
use
then of course, after you buy all the technology, because I'm ignorant on this kind of stuff, just say all the technology and the software. But then it needed to be upgraded, and then they don't support the one you have but was working fine for us, but then they don't support that any longer. And it's almost like you get in and you got to keep on going and going and spending money, and it was like, no, we took it out and put the money into other stuff, and now it's on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. It doesn't cost us anything, and like tonight's meeting will be posted by midnight tonight, or by the next day at the latest.
The way we did it in my old job was we basically used the board agendas as like an index, and we had kind of a matrix where and I should say this was preceded me. I inherited this, and then we kind of built it out of that. But we had every item that had ever appeared on a council agenda going back 15 years was in an Excel matrix, and if something was talked about, you could just search and see, okay, it was on this date, you could go to the packet, and it didn't make it like that, but it made it so much easier than just trying to, rifle through files or servers. So, I think that is, probably 2 steps down the road, that's where I'm trying to get to.
In the Granicus thing, you had a link into that, then you had a link into this, and it was always hard, and Chris had to do, it wasn't as easy as they thought, right? No.
You had to download their software, Silverlight or whatever.
Yeah, and it never was supported again. It just became, okay. schedule.
Right. Okay, Angus has prepared a draft for, timeline for the FY '20 budget?
No, this is actually last year's timeline. This is the FY '20 budget cycle. So
Oh,
this is
okay,
kind of
okay.
by way of comparison.
So these dates are
These are last year.
last year's dates,
They're
okay.
there as a reference to show.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, okay.
Show why having a
confused about
duplicate
that.
process really would push things to
It would, but we had,
an unreasonably early date.
I think it would, but the FinCom discussion was good. I included the same memo I sent to them. I didn't have time to update it, but basically, coming out of their meeting, what they said was they totally understand that under the legislation, I shouldn't be presenting a budget to them until this board has kind of had your hands on it.
Vetted it, at least?
Right. So they totally understand that, and I understand that, so that's gonna be how we're gonna do it. The good news is, two major things that came out of last Monday's meeting. One is that they said the mid-February date worked well for them. They thought that even though they had at a prior meeting expressed to me that they'd like to pull it back a month, as they talked it through last Monday, they said actually the mid-February worked well, that they felt they had enough time to get into the depth of review that they expected.
Okay, because that was not what they said last year.
Right,
Yeah, but
and-
I think I'm gonna give Angus some kudos. I don't think they knew what they were gonna be dealing with because Angus was new. And then when they got the budget and how it was presented, and the most information they've ever got, I was told, and the way it was presented, it was much easier for them, so they feel confident getting at that date.
That's right. I mean, I, put together for their budget meetings the same kind of packet with backup that this board receives, with everything hyperlinked, again, making it as easy as possible for the public officials to do their job. So they said mid-February works well, and they also said that if there's essentially a pre-presentation to the board, which I'm aiming for like December, I would like to push things ahead, but maybe by like a month from last year. So instead of budgets being due to me early January, maybe more like mid to late November, budgets come to me. That gives me time to put something together and maybe present it to the board, possibly as late as the first meeting of January. So I could get budgets maybe even like the 1st of December, have about a month. The main thing is I just want to make sure, once I present the budget to the selectmen, that there's enough time between then and when it's due to the FinCom, because if you have significant changes or significant things that you want more information, I need to give myself more than like a 2 or 3 week cycle, full month there. But the FinCom understood that would actually work just fine, because anything I present to this board obviously is going to be a public meeting, so that gives them the opportunity to kind of preview what they're going to be seeing.
Just, my thing that jumps out at me is, if you're considering getting departmental requests, budget requests, even, say, 3 or 4 weeks earlier, maybe we can get the warrant a little bit earlier here too. February 13th isn't giving the FinCom an overly long amount of time. And if people are, if departments are thinking about their overall budget, then individual items that may require a warrant article, they've got to be in the back of their mind too. There's no reason they couldn't do that a couple of weeks earlier too. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
So I think what I can do is basically produce a draft FY21 calendar that I think works. I can work with some department heads, especially those with larger and more complicated budgets, to make sure it's something that we think is workable, and then bring that forward maybe at the next, I don't know about the next meeting, because I got some time off between now and then, so I may or may not get that done. But if not, at that first September meeting, I'd love to do it the next meeting to give people as much notice as possible if we're pulling things early.
I kind of agree with Archie on that, because I don't know, maybe because we don't get to see all the deliberation and maybe all the finer points on the operating budget. It seems to be that the warrants get more scrutiny than sometimes even the operating budget does. So to get that to people and to get that to us before.
Yeah, we might spend a lot of time on a $5,000 warrant article, and like a departmental budget that's $350,000.
We just say, okay.
We just say, fine, yeah.
So I'm hearing warrant closing more like late January?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Angus, how do you think the new chart of accounts going to expedite things for you or the departments or not?
I think it'll make it, it'll allow Lori and me to print clear reports more quickly. So yeah, we're gonna be able to produce more information more quickly. It really should be pretty seamless for departments. We kept the same account structure, because obviously.
You kept the same account structure?
Well, the budget for the expense accounts, because the budget that was voted in April, all of those expense lines are binding, because those were voted by the voters.
Okay,
So we have to
okay.
allocate that
You
back.
can't
So
divvy them up, you can't divvy them up,
Right,
okay.
For example, one thing we've done, and Wayne's here, so I'll use an example for him. Buildings and grounds, we've got, it's kind of a big bucket of money, fairly undifferentiated. But as we're tracking the expenses, he's coding them per facility. So even though the expense line is still that one line, the software allows us to have sub-accounting. So if that's, buildings and grounds investment in the money, or the money in this building or the library versus the garage.
How much money did you spend at the town hall last year on, and you could
Exactly.
go.
We'll be able to run reports.
That's
on that.
great, that's great,
Yeah, now the
yeah.
first year, when we're running these reports, we'll only have 4, 5, 6 months of data. But after a couple of years, you'll be able to report over time, what does it actually cost to run, the public safety complex, for example. So that's an example of, we couldn't deviate from what was voted in the spring. Some of the numbers are different.
Okay,
the structure's the same.
but will next year, will there be a completely different looking line item budget that will be shown to the voters?
No, I think it'll look very, very familiar. I think there will be some adjustments, but for the most part, it'll be substantially,
Because, no, but I don't know, just say some departments, I don't know, just to pick an item, have overtime, others don't have overtime, they just have personnel cost, are we gonna standardize the things through departments so that everyone has the same kind of, an administrative type expense, I don't know, a copier expense or whatever for
travel and training.
whatever, that should be the same in each
It
department.
is, yeah, so basically the account structure, there's kind of the first one is what funds, so that's gonna be general fund or water. And then it's the code is for the department. And then the next, and then as you get into the later numbers, basically it gets into those kind of object level, which is, so training and travel will be, I'm picking a number, but it'll be 2,300, that's in every department. So training and travel.
But, so in other words, that will change what goes to town meeting then, the line items.
Tracking not necessarily.
Okay.
It could, but it won't necessarily, and there's a reason why. So when we're tracking expenses, you know, Lori and I want to track things to that degree, so we have like apples to apples of what different departments are spending on training and travel, or, you know, supplies or clothing allowances, those kinds of things. Why I say you may not see that detail in the budget. I had this conversation with Gary Roberts my first week on the job. I sat with him and I showed him the Hamden budget, which it has all of that detail, and the West Newbury budget, which doesn't. And basically you know, I like the transparency of that, and I think the board would like it, I think the public would like it. The problem is, if we brought that level of detail to town meeting, and if they're voting instead of a department budget that has maybe 3 expense lines, salary, wages, you know, and 2 expense categories, if the town meeting is now voting 12 sublines, the problem with that, and this is a big difference between Maine and Massachusetts. In my old job, we could over or underspend one of those sublines as long as the bottom line was held within that.
Oh.
I had that authority as town manager to authorize that. Here, not only do you need a FinCom vote, but they can't vote it till May or June under state statute. So
Transfer money.
If we carve things.
Oh, so if you've got too small of a
Then
spot,
you have no flexibility.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
you don't want to do
So
that.
that's why you get into these kind of sub-accounts where we'll be able to run reporting, but that won't necessarily.
The chart of accounts will tell us where it's being spent.
Yeah,
We want to know.
So during the FinCom process, we can run reports that give you that transparency. And you heard some of that at town meeting. You know, someone asked me about the town manager technology budget, I think. And because it was like 32,000, some big number. And within that, we knew down to the dollar pretty much exactly how that 32,000 was budgeted. But if we put that all as separate expense lines, we would be tying ourselves in.
And then one might be $30 over and one $20 over,
And we'll be
okay.
spending all this time.
Okay.
Getting transfer.
Gotcha.
Transfer, we'll be spending some meetings transferring.
Right, and because you can't do those till May or June.
Yeah.
It creates a real.
Okay,
Okay.
So.
Okay, sounds good.
makes sense.
Thinking about the holidays already?
This is also just something I did in my old job, because we just get a lot of questions, and so I'd rather just get it set early in the fiscal year, send it out, that way everyone knows what are the days off. It's actually pretty straightforward here, because we don't have so many departments with different regular days closed. So, and if you want time to review this, there's nothing pressing about it. Labor Day is Labor Day. There's nothing that's happening.
Well, this isn't really, the only thing that
The only thing
is
is the,
discretionary generally in past years was the day after Thanksgiving.
Right.
Everything else is in our personnel policy, right?
It is, yeah.
yeah,
Okay. And how many, okay, no, I'm not going down that road.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, how many people does the day after Thanksgiving really affect, but I don't want, you wanna talk about that tonight? That was my mistake. Because it doesn't affect many people. Okay.
Do we want to get it out of the way so we don't have to think about it later?
Well, the only thing I would do is try to be cognizant of, and I think Angus is alluding to it, is that it's nice to have it ahead of time so people can plan, and there is no ambiguity around it. And so if our intention is giving people the Friday of Thanksgiving off, but we do it the Monday before Thanksgiving at our last meeting, people
That's what we were always doing. I
Yeah, my
know.
point is then people can't plan, and we're doing it anyway. If we're gonna do it anyway, we should probably do it as early as possible so people can plan. It's just being nice to people. And I'm trying to,
Yeah,
I'm trying to do that more often
I,
these days.
I know, we know we're going to do it unless,
I'd make a motion,
I mean,
yeah.
if the convention is to do it, if we know, I don't, you know, again, I'm new on the board, No,
Well, the thing is, the office is,
But if it. the
We
convention
didn't,
is-
we didn't want to make it we wanted to make it discretionary, but we always do it, so that's sort
it
of.
was some
yeah.
contractual things, because the first, I said it the wrong way, and then we got a grievance. So I said something about, no, I don't know what I said. But we all have to take this into perspective. We're only open till noon, this building, anyway. So I would only make a determination on this building. We can't make a determination, I guess we can. Maybe the library wants to be open, I don't know. Or do they, whatever happened to them in the past? I don't know. Do we just leave it up to them?
The library likes to be open.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought so, yeah.
Yeah, they have a,
So if this is, I'd make a motion that the 1910 building would be closed on the day after Thanksgiving, because we're only open till 12 o'clock, and it affects only like 3 or 4 people, if that.
second.
When you say it only affects 3 to 4 people, I'm not objecting, I'm just.
Employees that actually work on Friday,
there's a
because
lot
we're
of
only
people-
open from
a
8.
lot
We're only open from 8
people don't work.
Every
on
Friday, we're only open from 8 to 12 anyway.
Right, I understand that, and a lot of people actually aren't in on Friday.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay?
Okay, that saved us like an hour. We've beat
In
that
late-
out to death sometimes.
In late October,
Yeah.
early November.
Sounds like a good one to pick up in the quiet summer months.
Yeah.
If you want to call this quiet, I'm not really sure that we can call it, but. Make a motion to approve the minutes of July 22nd.
You don't have,
Oh, that's right.
I ran out of time. I got to the agenda.
Can I, this is the regular business thing. Do you mind if I say something at this point, or you want me to say it at the end?
At the end.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So on town manager updates.
So, and actually, a number of these fall to wane. So, the first is, the board had asked for update on the street paving and guardrail work, so you have a summary of that, and the things here to elaborate or answer any questions.
So we've been pretty occupied with the stormwater stuff. It was my first year ever preparing stormwater, and of course it was the big year. So I guess I got my introduction to it. So we focused on that, and then we still have prepared the Mass Highway contract that has to be prepared for the Chapter 9 money to be used, which is I'll put this on the record, a lot of work to prepare a Mass Highway group contract. It's not as typical 30B contract. There's a lot of pre-qualifications and just disaster. So I haven't got around to that yet, and I was trying to focus more on the guardrail study, which the study it's helpful. They did a great job at it, but it definitely needs a lot of work for prioritization, and for cost.
So who did this one?
Merrimack Valley Planning Company.
Okay.
And they did a great job at it. They recognized where they were, which is a good starting point. But obviously, you need to go out to each individual one and decide how you want to prioritize them, and then put an estimate on how much it costs, because that might help you prioritize which ones you're going to do. If you can do 4 or 5 of them with cheaper money than do one, it's going to take the whole. So I have not got around to that yet. There's another layer of stormwater stuff that's due 3 months from now, but I'm trying to do it before stormwater, MS4 stuff.
Sure, it's like less than 2 months from now.
I think so. I think it's another requirement 6 months after that, so.
That sounds good.
So-
I have a question on this, the priority 2.
Yep.
What is on Merrill Street? And if it's full disclosure, I live on Merrill Street.
Yep.
So major driveway approach work means, I just don't understand the English.
It's when you pave the street too many times or you don't have any grade, we have to go back into the driveways to make the grade work, so we don't flood out the driveway, or vice versa, the water doesn't drain out your driveway.
Got it.
So right now, the street's really flat, the driveways are flat. So if I put an 1.5 inches on top, the street won't be flat anymore, and so the water that used to run out of the driveway won't run out of your driveway, or the water will run off the street into your driveway. You don't have it today. So we have to go into those driveways by 5, 10, 20 feet, slope them, grade them, and make sure the water goes out. So it's a lot of engineering and a lot of work. We want to do it right the first time, because don't wanna get the neighbors calling in and say, I never have water in my driveway now.
Okay, I just didn't know what that meant.
So,
Thank you. I don't have any questions.
I don't either.
The master?
So I'll just say briefly, because I have had a resident question as well, that basically there's gonna be a big amount of paving next season. This year was crack sealing.
it was.
So I noticed you talked about grouping 3 years' worth of chapter 90 funds
That's
for
correct.
paving together. So do we already have those funds and they're held in reserve essentially for, I didn't realize you could hold them for multiple years.
Well, it's a reimbursement program, correct, how Mass Highway works?
Is it the way it works? Okay.
How's it work with Mass Highway? They actually give you the money?
I think we get the money.
Do we?
Mhm.
Yeah, we have a significant
better.
balance.
But it's essentially somewhere, it's in safekeeping somewhere.
Yes, so we have 434,000, I believe, that's 2
$12
years
billion
worth.
bars
We
sitting
get
around.
217,
Yeah.
So which helps me write the contract next year.
Yeah,
I could
yeah.
actually put a value of the contract at $600,000,
Yeah.
so it might bring that paving down $1 or $2 a ton. If they know they got $600,000 to pave it into, so.
Oh.
So that actually gives a little leeway also.
Okay.
And I would put the bid out during the winter, so they know they have work April 1st, which is much different than trying to put the bid out now.
Yeah.
When they already got too much work, and then they laugh at it about November.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The next item on the agenda is the draft MassWorks application. Archie had sent me a couple of suggestions over the weekend, and we made those edits. Well, we made one edit. There are a couple that I don't think that we can make in terms of transit-oriented development and economic development, in terms of how MassWorks considers those. This project really doesn't check those boxes, which is why I didn't check those boxes, but I understand that, common sense doesn't always line up with what they've defined as these things. But basically, unless the infrastructure investment is going to be a catalyst for development that wouldn't otherwise happen, it doesn't warrant. So the fact that it facilitates access to existing places of employment is good, but it doesn't, in terms of this grant, it's not something that gets you any points. So you have in front of you the draft. We had a meeting on Thursday. Wayne and I had with the mayor, her chief of staff, and the city engineer. One of the material things that we talked about with them was the decision of which design concepts to include with the grant, because as you know, there are 6 or 7 different schematic designs that the engineers produced. We don't want to put 6 or 7 designs in with a grant, and makes it seem like we have no idea what we want. We want to include 2 alternatives, so those are the 2 that are in your packet and were in last week's packet as well. And we wanted to make sure that the new report agrees those should be the 2, and they do.
So they want the one sidewalk too, or?
Well, the mayor.
I think the mayor does, yeah.
She showed support at the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, it adds $400,000 to the project. So I think that my observation is if we get this $1 million grant, there's a very clear path to fund this project between the 2 communities. If we don't get the $1 million grant, we'll have to talk about what to do. We're hoping for the grant.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Is this a all or none thing, or would they make, well, we'll give you 300,000 or something?
Well, that's another scenario.
Yeah.
They could certainly give us a grant for less than the full amount. They could also turn down the grant, say, encourage you to apply next year. That's not our goal. Our goal is to put our best foot forward and try to get it this year.
Okay,
Okay.
good luck.
Angus, I know I asked you one question earlier, but I had one other note here on, if you don't mind, on the draft. under section 4, preparing for success, 4.2, does the municipality have a current master plan and or economic development plan in place? So we have a master plan, referred to the comprehensive plan when it was created, but it's 1999. What's the validity of a master plan? Because is it 10 years, 20 years? Do you know?
10 years,
So
it's
so-
not.
so it's not,
Yeah.
so ours is not considered current at
Correct.
this place,
Right.
at this point, yep, okay. So, which is obviously why you check now, right?
And if you read some of the predictions, they were not.
On the other
Yeah.
hand, if you look at some of the goals, they were completed. So, you know,
So we have gotten a number of letters of support. Senator Tar and Rep. Miro both submitted letters. We've received letters from probably a half dozen residents, 5 anyway.
Probably 20 by this evening.
Oh, wow, so there's, okay. We've done not only us, others, there's been a big push on social media, and so it sounds like he's gotten much more since last week, which is great. And we'll have one in there from the city. So we'll have a lot of letters of support, which is, the consultant has been telling us right along that that's the single most important thing. I don't know if that's true, but it's definitely important.
when do you need the letters by?
Wednesday, Thursday.
Wednesday or Thursday of this week.
So to anybody that's listening that has a strong feeling about the bridge, email a letter to the town manager, and that will perhaps help expedite the process. And it doesn't have to be lengthy.
Your letter could be the $1 million letter.
Right.
Yeah, but that's exactly right, Archie. It does not need to be lengthy. Just saying it's important to you.
And why it's important, how it affects my life.
Yeah.
Passionate.
Okay.
Where are we? Okay, Mill Pond Dam, you'll have to tell us about that.
Just a status update. As you know, there's a new mandate with the emergency action plan, and we did get town meeting support to allocate funds for emergency action plan for Mill Pond Dam. Wayne's been working with the consultant on pursuing a reclassification of the dam hazard classification from significant to low, which, if that's successful, would eliminate the need for the emergency action plan. So.
So we should know in the next 30 to 40 days if they will declassify the Mill Pond Dam. If they don't, we have 3 months to prepare one, which they said they need around 30 days to prepare the action.
Okay, so who is this person, Michael Sabulas?
He is the consultant.
So he's working for us?
He's a local.
Yeah, he lives in West Newbury.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he came up and was the only person that answered me back to help with this, honestly.
Oh, that's wonderful,
All the
okay.
consultants ran away when we said we're doing a dam study, so.
He actually was at that Merrimack Valley, or Merrimack River watershed, or whatever the name of it was, task force meeting that was hosted over at Northern Essex back a month and a half or 2 ago. I met him there.
Great.
So we could maybe go from a $3,000 evaluation compared to what the original estimate was of $8,000, $9,000.
Okay.
So it's a
Great.
cost savings if we classify it.
Yeah, Tom, thank you.
Item R,
Q is just informational. It's an initiative that's going on with the Mill Pond Committee that's.
Oh, right, okay.
Expected to develop some recommendations back on the Mill Pond management plan, specifically on the water quality testing and potentially lake pond management. Basically, the committee wants to make sure they're being good stewards of the resource. And the language has been in the Mill Pond management plan for many years that there will be water quality testing conducted, I believe, every 2 years. But that hasn't happened, so rather than starting testing, the committee and myself, so we don't know really what we'd be testing for. We should talk to someone who specializes in lake and pond management plans, because it's for invasive species is a concern, potential, water quality, but it's not a swimming resource, but some dogs go in, people's kayaks tip over in there. So basically, the Mill Pond Committee had some funds left over in its FY19 budget, and so was able to engage the services of the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission to help them get to that answer of basically what type of stewardship activities should they be doing to keep that pond in good shape over the years.
Would that stewardship be the depth of it? Because it seems like we might be losing it again. We had to dredge that. When did we dredge the mill pond?
20 years ago.
Yeah.
That long ago, really?
Probably
Yeah, it
not
was-
quite that close to that.
It's right before.
Maybe like 15.
So 20 years ago.
Yeah,
So
I'd say
I would say the
17,
depth,
18 years ago,
Yeah.
it's probably 5 or 6 years after I moved.
I would say the stewardship too would be,
And I
because
did
supposedly I'm told that, there's no fish in there anymore, then they're not eating the algae and they're not eating this, so then everything's growing in it and then we're losing the depth and we might even lose the pond eventually.
Well, so that, I found, there was a 1988 and a 1998 study. The 1998 was related, I believe, to the dredging. So we scanned both of those in, got those over to the consultant. I haven't been through them, but we did find them. And so they're really at the very beginning of their work. So I'm glad you brought that up, because those are exactly the kinds of things that I can make sure they're focusing on that question.
I don't want to lose it. And I don't think we've really, since I've been a selectman, we haven't done any real, hey, let's keep this resource in town and what are we long-term planning? I'm not saying that nobody has done it.
Mhm.
I just can't remember it. So I think we need, before it gets away from us.
Well, I thought there was supposed to be a maintenance, I thought I recalled there was supposed to be a maintenance plan. There's sort of an embayment before the bridge. There's a little bridge that goes across to take you up into, up the hill
Up
into
the
the
hill.
woods. So if you go down past the building and
You go through the gates.
Yeah, go through the gates, up a couple of hundred yards, there's a culvert, up on the bridge, and there's an embayment on the left-hand side, and then the pond is on your right-hand side, and that embayment was supposed to trap organics and, any sediment that was coming down off the hillside, and for some reason I thought that there was a maintenance plan for that embayment to try to keep organic matter or reduce the amount of organic matter that went into the pond. Now, my memory might be wrong.
Well, that would all sound probably part of the management. You're probably all right, but I don't know if we've really implemented
Yeah,
it.
well,
That's
I
my
mean,
problem.
Possibly there wasn't. I don't recall who was involved with that at the time. I mean, I'm sure we could
I don't
research
either.
that and figure out who was involved at the time and see what the original plan was. Somewhere there's an original plan that explained what was going to be done, because we spent a bunch of money on that process, and then we carted material up and put it on a field up above, and it was a pretty extensive process to dredge the pond at that point. I don't recall at all who was. I was new enough in town that I don't recall who was exactly involved with the
So
process.
roughly, how long ago?
I would have guessed around 2000, or it doesn't seem like it could have been a year or two later, so maybe right around 2000.
Well, so the dredging study, which I believe was a pre-dredging study, was
Yeah.
1998.
Okay, well, that would make sense.
That makes
And then there was a
sense.
long
Yeah.
process and figuring out what we were gonna do, and then budgeting for it and voting at town meeting, and then contracting it out, and so.
Yeah, so I think
maybe
that's.
2000.
We might want to go down and just look at it and say, this thing could be filled and that's maybe the reason why we're not getting water. Who knows? We might want to just take a quick gander down there and see what's going on.
So the committee meets again in September, and so I wanted to share this just because at some point they'll be coming back with recommendations, so I wanted to make sure you understood what they were working on.
Cool.
Okay.
It would be good if we could find the original, go back and look at, town reports from 20 years ago and in that time frame. And there should be reference to it, which might lead to the original documents that explain what was gonna be done and what the maintenance plan was.
Goes up on a lot.
Boy,
What?
that's good.
Memo from the planning board regarding chapter land policy regulations and procedures. So this is a reiteration for our benefit of procedures for right of first refusals, basically.
It's just informational.
Placing follow-up meeting assignments and placing items on future agendas.
I can tell you what I've got for, coming up. For the next August meeting, we've got a review with the bicentennial committee of the proposed location for, or actually talking about potential locations for the time capsule. Got a couple of special event permits coming your way. East Coast Greenway has put in a request for signage and public rights of way. Discussion of the Memorial Day Parade, potential changes in terms of 2020, how we want to do that.
That's gonna be on the next meeting?
That's been the thought.
I
You did say
I
August.
wanted to do it
Sooner than
tonight,
later.
and Angus had some reasons why to put it.
So,
Memorial Day Parade.
Okay.
in the participants, and so everybody has been, gonna be notified?
Well,
That was the issue, yeah.
Okay.
Because I didn't have time for tonight's meeting, so, yeah, I'll make sure that everybody's notified.
With I don't know what you guys think, but my feeling would be that, okay, we'll have a discussion, and anyone that wants to weigh in on it, but it can't be like 6 hours, that half an hour of.
And no attacks.
Exactly, half an hour of commentary, and my feeling with the caveat that we absorb all the information from different people and not necessarily come to a decision at that time.
Yep, I would agree. Because it's not really,
It's a complicated
and it's
thing.
not time sensitive.
Right.
We still have months.
But I would say,
But we do want to, in the end, have a policy.
yes,
Yeah, I
but
would
not
agree.
necessarily right at that
Right,
moment,
right,
yeah.
right, right.
You
Sometimes
agree with
those
that?
meetings,
Ray? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sometimes those meetings, after it settles for a while, new things come up, and, just a little bit dissecting all this stuff.
One thing that may or may not come together for the next meeting, but for a future meeting is, you'll recall, Rick may not, but the other two will, that we put in, we had a number of meetings last winter about trying to get the selectmen policies all under one cover.
Yeah.
And so we were like right at the finish line, we didn't quite get done, but I really want to get that over the finish line because a bunch of work went into it and we're almost there. So updates to the selectmen policies will be at a future meeting. I've got Wayne's been looking at both Bridge Street and Church Street speed limits. That's probably a longer term issue. He's been doing some data collection on those, but that's on the work plan. And within the selectmen policies, I'd like to get a policy on the books regarding query checks. As a practical matter, I've been requiring query checks for certain hires, but I think that would be good to, make that an official policy. And cable contract with Verizon, I did correspond with them following the meeting that Mike and Glenn and I had back in June. They confirmed the ball is in their court, and at some point they'll send us a proposal. So they're not waiting on us for anything.
Good.
Anything else, Rick?
Well, yeah, I mean, at some point, do we want to take a look or try to understand what the situation regarding the donation match for the CR, for the Brown Spring Farm Conservation restriction? And I think,
What do you
Green
mean?
Belt has a closing, there's supposed to be a closing, I think, in early September. And it would probably be good if we understood where that was, and if the public understood where that was.
I think the last one is good, because I think everybody, you're right there, Rick, because I think people see that fundraising stuff, and they think if they don't reach their fundraising goal, that they're not gonna be able to match, and the whole deal's gonna fall through. It was my understanding that they have the money and they're researching it, and if they don't, not researching, fundraising for it, and if they don't come up with the money, they still have money that they could use to be able to keep the deal from going forward. But
From falling apart, you mean?
I'm sorry, from falling apart. So I think it's great if we do have somebody in here, because a lot of people have asked me that question too. They didn't understand, what does this mean? What happens if they don't do it? Does the whole thing fall apart? So a good understanding of exactly what's their responsibility on their side would be good to the public. I would agree with that, Rick. Hopefully that was what you were saying.
Well, specifically, I know there's some money that was, and I don't recall if we talked about this, if we've spoken about this or not, but there was money gifted by a resident back 15 years or so ago that was intended to be used for ideally towards some preservation of agricultural land.
Mm-hmm. But I haven't seen any. I think it's the onus is up to Greenbelt to be able to follow the proper procedure of that donation, not the selectmen. Somebody has to ask for that.
Yep.
So if Greenbelt, we've already put our money up. So I would think I haven't seen anything in front of me that we could say yes or no. And I would actually make sure that we pull that out, because there are some provisions of that, and the selectmen refresh their memory of that.
So maybe we could review that
Yep,
for the next meeting.
Well, it's not our responsibility we can review it to make sure the proper process is in place. But Greenbelt needs to put in their proper application and ask for us, because we're the stewards of that, and nobody has done that. So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Okay.
So I don't want to review it, because there's going to be what I meant about reviewing. There's some terms of that gift that we have to follow, but we can't even follow that because nobody's asked us to do it. So somebody needs to ask us, so then we can follow the procedure. You know what I mean by that? It's like the chicken and the egg. We're not the ones that are supposed to be promoting that.
Okay, so in your opinion, who needs to ask that
Greenbelt.
question? And is Greenbelt the only entity that can ask that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I honestly don't know. They're trying, if they wanted to be part of their money, you know what, I don't know. Would you know, Mike?
The gift doesn't particularly say.
The gift,
Yeah,
the gift,
could ask.
the gift particularly doesn't say anyone can ask. You're not on the microphone. I'm just
Where
making.
can I find the wording for that?
I would recommend we put this on for the next executive session, just to make sure the board is fully apprised as to the purpose and intent of the gift and the parameters that were established when the gift was given. So
Okay.
That's what I was talking about.
There's a little bit more to it than we're saying.
Yes, there's a little bit more. That's why I said we all should. I've read it, and a while ago, but I'm going to reread it. But if you could provide that, we could do that. That'd be terrific.
Okay, yeah, well, I couldn't ask that in the executive session because it wasn't on the
Yep.
agenda, so
That's fine.
just now will be.
Mr. Kemper has
Do you mind
asked
if I
for,
say
if he could say something, and I said yes.
Okay, thanks. I just have a brief statement about the situation that I've found myself in and the town's found themselves in, dealing with the issue of my bankruptcy and the health insurance payments. Okay? I was approached last week by a representative of some former selectmen. This person told me that if I did not resign at tonight's meeting, that they would publish a letter in the Newburyport News calling for my resignation. I want to assure all of my supporters in the West Newbury community that I have no plans to resign. I understand, after watching the last selectmen's meeting, how people could feel I was not sincere and understand how I affected the town and the townspeople. I want to make sure it's clear tonight. I am sorry. A sorry is empty if I don't tell you why I'm sorry. I'm sorry it happened. Sorry it lasted as long as it did. Sorry how it affected the town and the people that work here. The experience has made me a better man and a selectman. I wish it never happened, and it won't affect me going forward as being a selectman. Actually, I think it will even make me work harder. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me that time. Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.